Good evening and welcome everyone to the public workshop for the Vineyards at Marsh Creek Event Center and Amphitheater. My name is Alan Bacalar, Engineering Manager with the City of Brentwood, and I am responsible for managing the design of the amphitheater project for the city. This workshop is intended for and open to all residents of Brentwood. The project team thanks you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this workshop. I would like to inform you that this workshop is being recorded and will be available for viewing online on the City of Brentwood's YouTube channel at a later date. During this workshop, please feel free to enter questions you may have utilizing the chat function or Q&A function within Zoom. The project team will be monitoring questions received through this function, and we will be addressing them accordingly towards the end of this workshop. Let's see, additionally, there will be a Q&A session after the presentation of the project where we will be utilizing the raise hand feature within Zoom to provide a chance for attendees to ask questions or provide comments on the project. A quick overview of the goals we have for this workshop is to, number one, introduce the project as this is our first public workshop. Also, number two is to summarize the results from previous workshops we have held with key stakeholders. The key stakeholders I would like to mention are the Vineyards at Marsh Creek residents, Brentwood businesses, arts, education, and recreation groups, where we have gained valuable feedback and we have taken into strong consideration in guiding our designs to where it is today. And most importantly, at the end of the presentation by our architect, DLR group, we would like to receive any feedback or concerns you have about the project, and we're happy to hear them. Let's see, prior to handing over the workshop, I'd like to quickly introduce the city team that is participating in tonight's meeting. First of all, we have Bruce Mulder, Director of Parks and Recreation. We have Steve Kursivan, the City Traffic Engineer. Jack Dhaliwal, Assistant Director of Public Works. Josh Ewan, Senior Analyst with the Economic Development Department. John Odrzewalski, the Parks Planner. And Elaine McGurk, Administrative Supervisor with Parks and Rec. And she will be helping us in navigating and monitoring our chat and our raise hand feature through this meeting. Before handing it over to the architect of the project, I wanted to briefly go over our overall schedule. As you may have seen previous schedules shared regarding this project. So I just want to give you guys an update on it. So currently we are wrapping up the schematic designs for this project. However, we are about to hit the pause button on design and enter into a SEQA process. The city will be hiring a consultant to provide a supplemental environmental impact report. The project, as was previously mentioned in previous workshops, was analyzed as part of the 2004 EIR, which was for the original development, the Vineyards at Marsh Creek development that included this project site. And the supplemental EIR process will analyze the project under today's conditions to analyze and identify environmental impacts, such as those related to noise and traffic. This will be a public process, and you can expect, and I think we're anticipating in July of 2022, which is next year, we will be hopeful to publish a draft supplemental EIR document, which will have all these analyses completed and shared. And the public, including everyone in all the concerned citizens and residents of Brentwood will have an opportunity to review and comment on this EIR document. Shortly after that, once it's completed, we anticipate taking the supplemental EIR to the Planning Commission and City Council for approval and consideration in the winter of next year. Once that is complete, if everything goes as planned, we hope to restart the design process and hopeful to start construction in the summer or fall of 2023. And to complete the construction of the project, hopefully by the summer/fall of 2024. So I'm sure you guys will have questions about the schedule and we can talk through it once again at the end of the presentation. With that, I would like to hand over the microphone or the video to Jordan, our architect who is with DLR Group. So Jordan, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Alan. I want to thank everybody who's attending tonight. I really appreciate your taking your time out of your busy schedules to participate and join us tonight to hear about what is slowly becoming one of a wonderful milestone location and for your community. Just to let you know, I'm Jordan Levin. I'm an architect with DLR Group. I want to tell you a little bit about who DLR Group is. DLR Group is an integrated design firm. So what that actually means is that we're not just a series of architects. We also have a series of engineers, and there are a variety of team members on this project, which I'll let you know in a second. We have multiple disciplines that we design the different types of buildings within our firm. And I want to say that there's a specialized group of cultural and performing arts individuals like myself that specialize in the arts, and that's who is working on your particular project. Our firm has done over 300 arts projects around the country, some abroad. Many of those have actually won subsequent awards. We're an owner, employee-owned company. So that all gives us a very great sense to be very proud of what we do and what we work for and towards our company. So some of the other players that we have behind the scenes that are not necessarily here tonight, I mentioned that we have structural, mechanical, electrical engineers on our firm, on this particular project within our company. We also have acoustics, theatrical, audiovisual systems, architectural lighting that also play a tremendous role in developing a performing arts type space. In addition to that, we've heard from your group during stakeholder meetings the issues of security. So we actually have an in-house security consultant on our project, as well as telecommunications. Now, from the outside, we have several consultants also, landscape, civil, cost estimating. And with me tonight, since this project is so large and has a lot of landscape associated with it, Rusty Case is here, and I'd like to introduce him. Rusty?
Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everybody. I'm Rusty Case. I'm a principal landscape architect here with Gates & Associates. We're a landscape architecture firm here in the Bay Area. We just recently relocated from San Ramon to Walnut Creek in the last couple of months, but we've been around the Bay Area for 40 plus years and have done many projects in and around Brentwood over the years, and really excited to be a part of this one. It's a big venue, so it's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Yeah, we thought it was very important to have local presence to understand your specific community. We're also local. We have offices in Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles. So the teams that you have on this project are all within a stone's throw of Brentwood. Before we get into the project itself, I'm going to pass it back to Bruce, who's going to give you a little bit about the history of the project. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. And thank you, Rusty. And thank you, Alan. I'm Bruce Mulder, Parks and Recreation Director with the City of Brentwood. And I have to say, this is a very exciting project for us with the city. And I think you're going to be really impressed with some of the images and the way this project is coming together. So just to set the stage a little bit and provide some context, this project started back probably before 2004, but it was put into the 2004 development agreement with the Shea Trilogy residential development that we see south of town. This is one of our premier residential developments, and this project was always in the vision of this residential development to be part of the city project here. So it's very exciting. What we're going to see here is this very beautiful residential development, but also an amphitheater that is intended to meet that same level of character and design. We now have the Brentwood Community College right across the street. We have the future John Marsh House State Park. We have a future bike trail that is in progress right now to come to this area, which will actually go all the way to Round Valley. So there's some really exciting things that are happening in this area, in this amphitheater, has the potential to be one of these real iconic Brentwood facilities. So it is about 1,000 seat, 750 to 1,000 seat amphitheater. It's meant to be more of a community venue. And it also has kind of an event grounds and some different things. So it's really exciting. This project has gone over the years through a couple of different market feasibility studies. And then it has gone to the city council through strategic planning. They have seen conceptual designs of what this amphitheater might look like that provided the vision. And through strategic planning over the last couple of years, the city council has brought this forward and to continue to design and build this amphitheater. So right now with DLR Group, we are in the process of design. Again, we have gone through several stakeholder meetings to put the pieces together. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jordan because it's a really exciting project. And I think everyone is very interested in seeing how this is coming together. So with that, Jordan, I'll put it back to you again. Staff is here also to help answer questions that many of you may have. So, but with that, I think Jordan's going to take it from here, share his screen, and start to present the project. Take it from there, Jordan.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Great intro overall. I wanted to sort of give you the big picture of what we're doing here tonight. So we're going to go through sort of our design process of how we got to this particular location. So as Alan had mentioned early on, this is, we are just completing our schematic design, which means that we sort of have our complete understanding of the scope of the project. We understand the massings of the buildings. We understand how they might fit on the site, but we have a couple other phases to go through to really design the detailing of it. And so as we go through this process of looking at the project tonight, it's not complete. So I should let you know, which allows you to make some comments, and the feedback that you provide tonight can also help us make the project even better. But you're also going to see some incomplete modeled renderings. And then at the very end of this presentation, I'm going to show you our conceptual renderings of what this thing will possibly look like. So the presentation itself is, because of COVID, we started using what we call a mural board. And this is essentially a digital whiteboard that allows us to zoom in and out and make essentially all the notes that we need to in one location. We're going to be using this tonight as I sort of sift through the information. I'm going to start out really early on in our process where we actually took a really close look at the site. You can see that we had a model of the existing topography, which we then went out and started manipulating to fit this project in the site. It's a 31-acre site, and it's nestled between the John Marsh Historic House, just off the Vineyards Parkway and the Trilogy Vineyards community. So what we were tasked with is a 750 to 1,000 seat amphitheater. Right now, we have about 250 seats fixed in an amphitheater seated setting, which is a hard concrete type of situation, along with another 500 seats behind at 750 that will eventually allow a potential for growth in the future. This particular project also included, as part of the program, an event promenade, an open lawn space, a box office, restroom facilities, parking. And this was all to actually not just have the site be a amphitheater, but also to be a place for the local community to come for farmers markets, art exhibitions, and anything that we can think of, small festivals. So it's really a destination location, if you will. We've had multiple meetings since March, and these meetings were actually terrific. And as Bruce had mentioned, they were with the Trilogy residents, we were with the arts business community, the local businesses, the musicians and the local playhouses are in and around Brentwood that gave us a variety of feedback for the project. The feedback was all documented under, I know you can't read this, so I'm not, and I don't think it's worth going in and actually sharing every bit of information, but in terms of a large overall picture, what we heard from you is, the aspirations of the community was to have good climate control under the amphitheater canopy shading system, great access, accessibility for seniors, areas for farmers market, food truck, vendor sales, things of that nature. We also wanted to be safe. We wanted to be able to have security. And one of the more important things was to have visual links back to the John Marsh State Park. We also discussed utilizing the natural landscaping and introduce a quality of architecture that would provide a level of sustainability and provide excellent acoustics. And we're going to go through a little of all that today. Interestingly enough, the site seems to be very easily divided into three sort of zones just by the nature of the topography itself. So this is Vineyards Parkway right here. So there seems to be a plateau that allows for parking, and then an upper level that would allow for what we call the barn, which would include box office sales, some back of house support, and restroom facilities for everyone who's coming to this event center. Also an open lawn area. And then also tasked that we thought this was a premier location for it was an small event pavilion, a sculptural garden, and an adventure playland. And when I mean adventure playland, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but it is more of a natural playground area. It's not your typical traditional equipment type of playground with swing sets. Then the site sort of has a definitive bowl shape before it becomes more of a mountain. And that's where we are locating the actual amphitheater itself. So what this lends itself to is a sequence of what we've been calling rooms that allow people to sort of move through these rooms like you would at a home, from the parking to the pavilion, the upper pavilion barn area, and then move down to your living room or your so-called amphitheater, which also includes back of house performer support type spaces. So before I get into the specifics of the building, I wanted to discuss a little bit about sustainable design and how we approach design. And we focused on 4 distinct measures that we thought was really important to your particular community and this site and the project at hand. It was designed for equitable communities. So the concept of making this more of a human scale, having social equity, understanding traffic control, catering to the seniors and the aging community in and around Brentwood, and also recognizing the local history of the Marsh House and the Miwok Indian tribe. We also wanted to design for the ecosystem. So this concept of maintaining a level of biodiversity on the site, also keeping the skies dark, no light pollution, understanding that a lot of this site has animals and all that. I don't want to call it livestock, the animals that move around, the natural habitation. That was an important factor, not to destroy or disturb that too much. And also the understanding of the site acoustics. Also designing for well-being. So the concept of comfort, the indoor air quality of the spaces, understanding happiness, again, acoustics, and this introduction of food into this particular area. And lastly, as one of our 4 important criteria, was design for economy. So the concept of the building size itself, the materials that we're going to be using, understanding the links back to the community, and understanding, how that all fits in with the financial goals of the project. I want to share with you a little bit about the way the these particular components are placed on the site. I'm going to go up to this particular diagram. So this sort of shows you the destinations within the 3 zones. We obviously have the parking, which is on access with the main front gate. And then in that parking area, we will have a series of food trucks and vendors that will furnish food to the patrons. There is also an artisans and vendors location that is undercover. And these are some inspirational imagery that we use to help us sort of decide how we were going to approach this. You can see this shaded canopy is translucent as a screened mesh, with allowing vines and landscaping to grow up on it over time. The event garden, which would be a open place for picnics and views out to the landscape, would also allow for your Instagram moment, if you will, as well as a event pavilion for small entertainment or potential wedding events, as well as sculpture garden, and as I noted before, a venture type playland. As one descends down the hill, there is a natural arroyo that we're actually doubling and reusing for our rain stormwater management system that is required on site. So it'll look very natural as a dry bed river creek when it's not raining, but when it does in fact rain, we are going to utilize that to our benefit. And of course, the amphitheater itself, which has a stage, a back of house performing arts supports location, and then of course the seated area inside, both hard and softscape. This is actually the plan as it currently stands at the end of our schematic design phase, where we have introduced 250 parking stalls, which a number of them along this particular line are for electric vehicles required by code. And then we have accessible handicap spots on the other side at this location. We have a formalized drop off, but you can sort of see that if you were to park in this parking lot, one would migrate over to a centralized pedestrian pathway that leads into the center of the space as a welcome entry. We'll talk about the specifics of what's in each building a little bit later. But you can sort of see as you move around the space, the lawn space, the event pavilion location, the playground area, which is close to the parking lot for different hours than a particular performance. And then for an event, one would have to descend down the hill, crisscrossing over our natural arroyo to our amphitheater space that you can see here. What you're seeing right here is a future expansion concept that would allow for indoor performances, indoor art exhibitions, potential banquet facility. And we were charged with identifying a particular location for that event center, but not to necessarily design it at this time. The strategic location of this is dependent upon helping with acoustics for the local neighborhood that is just up to the north. I'm going to let Rusty explain a little bit about the landscaping strategies and how, in essence, not just the landscaping, but the paths that connect the state park with the community also crisscrosses through this site. Rusty?
Sure. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so Jordan kind of touched on how we broke the site into those three zones. Zone 1 is primarily the entries, the parking. Zone 2 is really the heart, the core of the site, and then Zone 3 is the amphitheater. And from the beginning, we really viewed this site as very multifaceted. It could operate most times of the year, even when there isn't a performance going on for farmers markets or any sort of a festival or a public gathering that really going to zone in on Zone 2. We do show these trails picking up from the road there, kind of crisscrossing and jumping over the road, but that you can get off on your bike or walk, and it takes you right up into zone 2, where you enter the adventure play / sculpture area, the great lawn, and then the barn. Some of the things that make that upper zone 2 unique is that sculptural play area, that natural zone. It's not your typical play area. It's a chance to let the kids engage with more natural materials. So more climbing boulders, hollow logs. We're envisioning these giant birds' nests that the kids love to kind of run in and out of. And those can also serve as sculptural elements. So it allows the kids to interact with art in a way that they don't usually get to do. And then, Jordan touched on the views. So the views from this zone down to the south and the southwest are really, really dramatic. We want to make sure we preserve those as best we can and not hinder anything. So the views directly to the Marsh House, down over the bluff, down to directly to the south, and then the amphitheater's tucked down a little more to the directly west, and you're going to actually see more over that instead of looking directly at it because of how it's positioned on the grades. From an overall, in terms of plant material, we wanted to make sure that from the start that this venue fits with its surroundings. And one of the great things about the current site is this natural grassland and the rolling hills. So we really want to make a point that whatever all the planting areas that we do, we want to make sure that they blend gradually to the native area. So you're going to see a lot of the more ornamental, colorful stuff up on zone 2. And then once you make your way down to zone 3, it's going to feather out and gradually transition to more of that native grassland. And a lot of the slopes around, because we do have a lot of grade in this project, a lot of those areas, if not all of them, are going to be covered in hydroseed, native hydroseed, that's going to give us a nice pop of color and help that natural transition from the built landscape to the natural, which it's very important for us to make sure that it fits in. So
I can see that my mural piece moved. It's very easy to move these pieces. I wanted to talk a little bit about, which I know is an important aspect, is sound management and acoustics from the actual amphitheater itself. And the theater itself is meant to provide and be very flexible, easy to operate the technical systems of this venue, because there's going to be a variety of different levels of people that are going to come to put on a particular performance. Somebody who is very high tech to somebody who is not. There's also going to be a theatrical lighting that's associated with this and built-in infrastructure for that, for most of the anticipated performances that will occur on this stage. Underneath the canopy, there's going to be overhead rigging to provide theatrical lighting and lighting fixtures and audio-visual speaker systems that will be either brought in by the vendor who's putting on the particular performance or a smaller venue that is put on by the city. The amphitheater stage itself is sized for concert bands, theatrical performances, choral concerts, and sort of all kinds of live music events, including movie screenings. So let's take a look at this concept of sound that we looked at. So we had placed the building strategically down low, and we also started looking at where the directionality of the particular amphitheater wanted to be. And that was a play on multiple things. One was it couldn't turn too far south that one did not still get a connection back to the historical aspects of Brentwood, being the Marsh House itself. And you'll see how we've integrated views of the Marsh House from the amphitheater together. The other one was if it was shaped too far to the north, you're sort of, the sound was going up towards the residences. And then if it's too far to the west, there were sun issues. So it was a really delicate balance to sort of place this. And we worked, and I'm going to share with you sort of all three of those to kind of understand how we're doing it. So just to give everybody an idea, this is sort of a traditional amplified sound at 90 decibels at the source coming off the amphitheater. And you can sort of see how the sound energy works in the natural bowl of the project. You can also see what happens when it's directed due, let's call it due west, as it is relates to this future event center that we're going to potentially place. You can see how there is a drop off behind. And I want to make it very clear, the decibel level that is actually only reaching this particular, everywhere else it drops off, just this particular level is the equivalent of a conversation. And I've actually brought that in just as a reference that you can see 60 decibels is a typical speech, whereas 90 is around a busy traffic or a tractor. It's an exponential type of scale. So we're at 60, which is a normal conversation. The sound energy coming off the theater itself is like using a chainsaw, I guess. You can see that this is not necessarily a rock concert, but we studied what would happen if we did eject into this a rock concert type setting and how much sound energy would be coming off. And I should make mention right now that there are requirements and code requirements in the city of Brentwood for the level of sound energy coming off of any type of venue. We also studied what would happen if we pivoted the building 45 degrees and how that would affect the sound affecting the neighbors up at the Trilogy. And it turns out it's very close to being the same. So the reality is our project is actually, I think it's 15 degrees, not 45 off of the 90-degree angle. So you'll see it as it is located. Let's see if we can see what that angle is. That angle is more 15 degrees to the southwest. I also wanted to let you know that we spent a lot of time understanding the solar angles and shading devices that would be needed. And what we've studied through our computer modeling program, how it would work on the site. You can see between solar and winter and the solstices, exactly how the sun angles work over the site. You can see that in the summer at high noon on June, towards the end of the day, the sun is so low in the sky, it actually comes underneath the canopy. And what we're planning on doing is providing some landscape berming around the back of the amphitheater, along with some trees to help shade it during those times. So just as an example, we would set up our model of the inside of the amphitheater, and keep in mind that this particular rendering of this amphitheater is accurate, but it doesn't show materials or all the rest of the infrastructure. So it's just a white model that's been built to study these components throughout the design process. So you can see 1 o'clock, it's completely in shade. 2 o'clock, the sun is starting to creep down over the building. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, the sun shines a little bit more on the outdoor amphitheater. The trees in the upper berm area start casting shadows. And you can see in the winter solstice, the sun sets around 4 o'clock behind the mountain. We've also spent a lot of time understanding the theatrical and architectural lighting around the site to avoid situations of light pollution. The types of fixtures are scrutinized to understand what type of lighting that are code compliant in terms of the amount of foot candles on a particular area as you're moving around the site. We have obviously in the parking structure itself, the parking lot is the more tall light poles, and then around the site itself, it becomes much more reduced, much more intimate with low level light. I will get into each particular building in a few minutes, but we've I just want to point out that we've studied the lighting both in plan and ceiling, and as well as that site plan. So understanding how underneath these open canopy structures, the light integrates in either a economic way or a festival way, or even in an emergency evacuation way. I'd like to start talking about the individual buildings themselves. So let's start with the barn building. That's what we've been calling it. It's sort of reminiscent of a barn that you would find in your area throughout history. But in this particular barn is slightly pulled apart, if you will, to kind of create entry and then a shaded area. So let's just talk about the barn itself, the program for the barn. So this is the actual entry off of the main pedestrian pathway. There is a freestanding solid roof element that is sloped in one direction, and then the rest of the barn is sloped in the other direction. These two locations provide shade. That is about 5,000 square feet. The rest of it, which is about 13,000 square feet of hardscape, is designed to provide for the farmers markets, the art exhibitions that we had talked about a little bit earlier. There is a box office that's associated with this venue. Not all performances will require tickets, but in the case that there is, or something is provided where there is that one does need a ticket to go down to the amphitheater, there is a box office space. This is also could double as a first aid station, as well as a information booth for any situation. The rest of the upper area is really meant to be for restroom facilities. So we have a unisex restroom, a custodial, and then we have 2 banks of restrooms for men and women, as well as some IT and electrical rooms that accommodate the electrical facilities that are both at the Zone 2 area and the parking area. If one was to require a drop-off, there is actually a drop-off area that allows patrons to bring their stuff to the hardscaped area, as well as if there was time in the morning to drop it off at the road itself. The roof plan shows that there is a series of screens, perforated metal at different varying openness to provide different levels of light and shadow for those areas. So it's meant to kind of cut the sun, but to still be able to have those views up and out. And let me share with you a couple of these models that we developed to show you what this particular element could look like and feel like. And again, please keep in mind, there are no materials yet on these, but we're seeing this as a combination of wood and steel buildings, where the roof here is a standing metal seam roof with a steel canopy type structure, and the rest of it is all wood and wood clad. It has quite of a tall feature to it to make it feel light and airy. What you're not seeing here is, and you will see it in our final rendering, places for seating, to eat, to communicate with your neighbor and friends and colleagues. As part of the design development, we're going to start to study what the percentage of shade wants to be down here. I think the current nature of this particular doesn't show, it looks like it's 100%, but it's not. It is a percentage of shade. I'd also like to move over to the event pavilion piece, which is this element here that's off of the lawn, has a direct view through it to the mountains beyond. which is strategically located in that fashion. This is a simple open-aired structure that's just to provide a simple roof on top, but the underside of it is painted like it's a butterfly. And as we studied and did some historical research on the Miwok Indians, there were several things that struck our interest. One was that there was a heavy use of acorns, which was interesting. Another one is they make these beautiful baskets with these patterns, which we're thinking about integrating into some of the woodwork. And then they have an understanding and love with the butterfly. And this pavilion is meant to be a sculptural element and also represent kind of, in a way, a butterfly. And so this particular piece looks a little like, as I noted, an open-aired steel structure with a platform that allows views out in every direction. But as you move through it, the openness in the front is for a sort of event, but if you move to the back, it is a provided framed view of your local neighbor in the state park. Rusty touched upon this. I don't know if he has anything else he'd like to add. I think you'd sort of see the concept that we're leaning towards for this natural playground area with this notion of birds' nests, logs, natural ground material for a playground. The final component is our amphitheater. So the amphitheater itself, as you migrate yourself down the hill, you would have to come back. And in this particular case, you'd rise back up to the rear of the lawn area. This is the lawn area that seats 500 people. There are locations for wheelchair access at all three levels: the upper level, the cross aisle mid-zone level, and in the front at the stage level. There are several rows of concrete seating and stairs up with lighting under each bench seat, as well as lights up the sides where the stairs are. There is a curvilinear wall that is sort of following the natural topography that becomes our upstage wall for theatrical backdrops. And access, of course, up to the stage level. And behind the stage is a performer support building and also several restrooms for guests down at this particular level. So down below, as well as an office and a loading dock and a loading area, there are needs for sound light storage, dimmer rooms, amp rooms, and of course a 10-person dressing room, which you see here. There is also a green room that can double as a potential bridal suite or a event center special room to prepare for that event. And to get an idea of the massing of that piece of the building. Oh, and this is the canopy structure itself that you saw in those images. This one is solid, and this is perforated metal, very similar to the materiality of what's happening at the barn level in Zone 2. This gives you a little bit of a sense, minus this is floating out in the middle of nowhere, so keep that in mind. Sort of an understanding of how this system actually works, how it feels in the landscape. A view from the center of the lawn looking at the stage itself. The sight lines have been carefully studied in terms of its rates. And getting a feeling of what it might be like inside down below in the amphitheater itself. These particular bars that you see here are the theatrical lighting pipes that the speakers and theatrical lighting will be mounted to. And before I get into the specific renderings themselves, I've also provided here if Rusty would like to add a little bit more about the landscaping materials.
Yeah, so quick overview of the plant palette. So this is a smattering of images of the conceptual plant palette, but really our big goals were low maintenance, drought tolerant, and deer and critter resistant. We know that that's always an issue on sites that kind of fringe the boundary here. But and if we can add some that have some color that are pollinators, that's a bonus as well. But it's going to be a mix of some of the larger massing naturalized grasses and shrubs, and then we will add some flair and color with some of these blooming shrubs that are going to be primarily found in zone 2, kind of where they'll greet you as you kind of get out of the car and into the site. So, and then our trees are oaks, deodar cedar, which are low water, fast growing, and they also help to block sound and dust and wind, things like that.
Thanks, Rusty. So as a final and to wrap up the presentation, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A, I just wanted to sort of share with you a couple renderings that we had developed as part of this particular phase. And I just want to share with you really quickly the view locations that we're going to be taking these views from. So the first view that you're going to see is right at the entry, and you're going to see sort of in the background the location for the food trucks, the catering trucks that would come to the site. The second would be looking at the future event center and lawn area and getting a sense of what that feels and looks like. The image number 3 will be taking right at the top or a little bit down on the path on your way down to the amphitheater, and understanding sort of the progression and sequence of you transitioning from one zone to the other and down the mountain. Rendering number 4 was taking right in the center of the amphitheater, but it also shares a view and how the integration of the historical landmark, the John and Marsh House, is integrated into that, as well as an overview image. So this is that first image upon arrival, where you can sort of see a pedestrian centralized path into the barn structure, where we have our vines growing up onto these particular pieces, seating for people as they are greeted with to eat, or pre-event type of location. You can also see in the background the event pavilion piece. If you were looking out towards the amphitheater, which is located right here, you can sort of see the top of it coming up over the hill as it descends down, but you also will see in the future some sort of event center that is a dual to the amphitheater itself. And you can see that this is where farmers markets would be set up, as well as what Rusty was discussing in terms of the growth of the natural flowers and tall grasses around the site to act as berms and walkways and separators. You can start to see in here the location of the arroyo. So here's a view at the top. As you start to move down the hill, what is going on? Something's coming up here. This is your walkway down. Our strategy is to minimize any handrails. They are all accessible slopes per code to get you down, and you can sort of see the arroyo is moving through that. But now you can start to see the amphitheater come into view along with the back performer support. But here's the lawn. There's a series of lighting at the upper backside, as well as the oak trees that Rusty was mentioning that help shade the space during sunny days. Here's a feeling of being inside the amphitheater bowl itself. You can sort of see that what we're trying to do in terms of shading, also developing a framing element to help frame the local history in the background. So while you're sitting, your connection back to the history, your connection back to the state park, it's all part and meant to feel as one location. Finally, an overall view of the entire site with the future event center in this location. I did sort of make the trees a little bit transparent because in this particular view, you may not see them as well. But the concept is that you can sort of see the different rooms that are created here and those particular zones and how they interact and join each other. And I'll leave it here and I will turn it back to Alan to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Jordan. Excellent presentation. This is also the first time for some of the city team to actually see it as well, but I'm very excited and pleased with what was presented. Good job. With that, before we go into Q&A, I wanted to address and acknowledge the questions that we have received so far. And perhaps we'll start there before utilizing the raise hand features and giving folks a chance to speak. So let's see, if I were to go to first questions we have is from Stephen Salates. What can we do to push parking lots or the parking lot as close to the Marsh Creek home as possible to minimize disturbance to the nearby residents at Vista Dorado? He is also concerned about the parking lot and its effect on his view from Vista Dorado. I did a quick check on what we're looking at initially with kind of the grade changes. The parking lot, from what I could tell, is going to be situated about 20 feet below the nearest homes to the west there. So there's going to be a significant drop. And I think Jordan showed in some of those conceptual views that you know, the views to the southeast from these homes shouldn't be affected that greatly. But we'll surely look at that in greater detail. And you know, we've utilized working with the existing grades out there. We do have a budget with this project, so we don't want to, as you all know, the cost to move earth is pretty expensive. So we're trying to utilize the existing topography out there, but we'll definitely look at trying to minimize the effect the parking lot has on those nearby residents. Jordan, do you have anything else to add on that? Well,
I was just going to add that you can sort of see that this area over here, to be able to push it to the more of the east, it drops off quite significantly. And one of the things that our civil engineer was talking to us about was we have to provide fire truck access up to this particular area on the site, as well as down at the amphitheater. But to be able to get the truck, there is a certain percentage of grade that must allow us to get up. And so that becomes sort of an aspect that I wouldn't say it landlocks us, because design, we can do anything we want to do. It just costs, you know, more and more money. And as Alan said, we were trying to minimize and utilize the existing topography as much as possible. Moving earth is expensive.
Yes. So thank you, Stephen, for that comment. We'll continue to keep that in mind as we move forward. So moving on to the next questions from Julie. She states that it appears the small pavilion has a stage that faces residences. She's asking that stages should face away from homes to minimize noise for nearby residents. So any thoughts on that, Jordan?
Yeah, we did not see this as a amplified type of venue. This might be somebody playing a guitar, but more often we would see this as more of a wedding type place. This was not really meant to be a live performance where there's going to be projected sound.
Okay, thank you, Julie, for that question. Miles Sewer, he states he's thrilled about what we're doing with this, but there are neighbors in Trilogy that worry about noise and traffic. He's asking, how do I answer them? He does state it doesn't look like noise is pointed towards us. I guess before I hand it over to Jordan, just want to point out that as I mentioned earlier, we are hiring an environmental consultant to help us through a CEQA analysis for the project, as times have changed since the original amphitheater site was analyzed in 2004. And a big part of that will be noise and traffic. So Miles, I would ask that, if when posed with that question, please be sure to share that information with folks. So we are definitely aware of the noise and traffic concerns. We are hiring a consultant to help us analyze, measure, and identify, the impacts of the project in terms of noise and sound and traffic. The results of those analyses will be public, and folks will have additional time to look at it and comment on that environmental process as well. So rest assured, we're looking at it, and we will spend a lot of time looking at it in the next year. Jordan, anything else to add on that?
Just to point out that this has come up several times in our stakeholder meetings with the residents. So it is on the city's mind, and that is something that will be looked at.
Thank you. And Julie has the next question regarding sound regulations. She's saying that they're great if they are actively enforced. She's asking if there's going to be a penalty for disregarding the limits. And also, is that penalty high enough to encourage compliance? She's asking, does the city plan to add resources to its venue and area to regulate noise and traffic? Well, maybe before moving on to that, with regards to enforcement of sound regulations and any penalties for disregarding limits, I might have to defer to Bruce on this one. Do you have that in place, or have you had that experience with other venues, Bruce?
Sure, I can address that. So I think a good comment, Alan, is that we will be doing additional analysis on these impacts, and that will really help to provide additional information. This will be a city-owned facility as well, so we will have control over the performances and the level of sound that will be at the site. So the city does have some control over that, because we will be owning the facility, and it will be operated through the city. It may be that we have some contracts that we work through to provide programming venues, but we will have control over some of that. So the sound impacts and the traffic impacts are things that we are very sensitive to. We've been very sensitive to this from the very beginning of the project. We understand that the location of this is very close to a lot of residential areas. And that is why we've done stakeholder meetings to get feedback, and another reason why we are going out to do an additional level of CEQA analysis to make sure that those impacts are studied closely before we move forward with construction on this project. So.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Her next question was, does the city plan to add resources to this venue and area to regulate noise and traffic? I think along the same lines as what Bruce mentioned, this CEQA process will help us through to make sure that we don't have to. The city doesn't want to add more resources to regulate noise and traffic. We want to have this project designed in such a way that it's properly in harmony with the community. And also, if there are any impacts, that they are mitigated to an extent that is acceptable for CEQA. Next question is, will the city provide additional security to Trilogy residents to discourage crimes of opportunity that come with new populations coming into senior living areas? Not sure who I could defer this one to with regards to security for Trilogy residents.
Well, I would like Jordan, one thing that you mentioned, Jordan, in your design is that you mentioned that security was one thing that you were looking at in this project. So can you comment on the security and the design from the design perspective?
Yeah, I think there's, you want to make sort of like security and security cameras kind of inobtrusive. They're not seen. So there'll be some strategy about where the placement goes, and we'll work with the city in terms of where we want to sort of provide. Because I mean, obviously, this is anybody can sort of meander through this particular area, not just during on an event night. So there's other kinds of situations where we're going to want to make sure that nobody's breaking into these buildings that has some sensitive equipment and things of that nature. So the doors and the actual buildings themselves will be, have security systems that are associated with it. I think maybe the question relates back sort of up the hill, like, will the city add additional above and beyond this site? But one way to be able to mitigate it would be to understand that there is security here as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add on that we will be looking at that closely, the whole security challenges with a site like this. Our law enforcement team will also be looking at it closely from perspective of safety and security. I think what the idea is that this is a gated facility, only open when we have activities and venues participating in the amphitheater, but it will have gates so that people cannot just come up when it's not open for the venue to be open. That whole thing still needs to be, is going to continue to be studied, the whole safety and security.
Thank you, Bruce. Next question's from Miles Sewer. He's asking if there's any solar, or why is there no solar included with this project. Not sure how to best answer that. I don't think we've contemplated solar. It would definitely have an effect on the look and feel of the project. It is a large site, so there is ample room to provide or secure future solar panel arrays in different other areas of the project. Jordan, did you have that?
Yeah, we have discussed this early on in terms of levels of sustainability and what we would want to add into it. The budget at the beginning of the project didn't really necessarily allow for something like that, but that doesn't say that in the future one could not be bringing in either solar panels and integrated into the roof of the barn building, or as Alan was suggesting, almost like a small array in the landscape. But we were trying to be less obtrusive about, in terms of too much damage to the actual aesthetic of the hills itself. It was discussed, but at this time there isn't. It's not part of the scope of work.
Thank you, Jordan. Next question's from Jackie. Her question is, who will own and maintain the amphitheater? That would be the city. The city would own and maintain the amphitheater and this project site. Next question's from M. Cohn. You indicated 250 parking spots. How does that support 750 to 1,000 people attending? Jordan?
Yeah, traditionally, people come in pairs or in threes. So the 250 relates directly to the 750 number. And that was a number that the city and us architects sort of agreed to based on the budget, allowing for future expansion. The future expansion could happen a little bit lower for expanded parking, if you will. But right now, the concept was 3 persons to a car is that average.
Thanks, Jordan. Also, we do anticipate, with the community participating and attending events here, that perhaps they might utilize golf carts or walk or bike or some other means of transportation over to the project site as well. So we believe the 250 is sufficient for now. Thank you for that question. Jackie has a question. What kind of security will be in place for when there is not an event going on? I think, as Bruce mentioned earlier, we probably have it all closed off except for certain areas, such as the event playground area, kind of the I guess when you look at it, zone 1 and zone 2, which is a little bit more above, but we'll look into that a little bit further as we get closer to actually having the project move forward through further design and plans for operations and maintenance. Next question is from Chris. How many nights will there be large events? Are there any limits? And will there be events on weeknights as well as weekends? This one's probably good for Bruce.
Yeah, the programming schedule hasn't been determined yet as far as the amount of programming that will be done at the site. Most likely, it'll start slower and work its way up. The feasibility studies, market feasibility studies that have been done show certain number of events, especially on the weekends throughout the main season. There could be, especially on the upper area, event area, there could be things going on during the week as well. I don't anticipate it to be, every night of the week. But during the season, most weekends, you would want to have programming to have a successful amphitheater. So especially during the season that it's running, which would be your spring, summer events. So, but that whole program schedule has not yet to be determined, and we are continuing to work on that operational aspect of it.
Okay. Next question is from Karen. Similar topic of whether there are hours that events will be held and until what time will the lights in the parking lot be on? Bruce, you want to give that a shot?
Yeah, again, it hasn't been determined at this point yet. I don't anticipate things going much past, I don't know what the specific time is, 10, 11 o'clock, but it's not something that's going to run super late into the evening past midnight. So it also will depend on weekdays versus weekends. But those are things that still yet to be determined. But again, we'll be very sensitive to the residents through that process as well.
Thank you. Next question is from Danny. He states that this would be acceptable as an indoor facility. An indoor facility would minimize sound and light pollution. Understood. Next question is, he has something about dressing rooms. He's saying that they need to be gender separated. He's also asking to enclose the roof for the entire 250 seat area. So maybe Jordan, you want to kind of zoom into the dressing rooms first to see how that looks.
Sure. So at one point in the program of this building, we actually had 3 dressing rooms, and the concept was they could actually be divided, men, women, and then the third one would be could be either or depending on who had more people. It wasn't really anticipated that the shows here would be that large, but I understand your concern, and actually going to one is actually an interesting dynamic if you do have different sexes. We have depending on that, we do have the green room. If there's, let's say there's just a couple of gentlemen and mainly women, or we could actually probably fairly easily build a divider down the center of the room, but that might limit access to the toilet room, but we may be able to reconfigure that so everyone still has access to that. I actually really appreciate and like that question.
Yes, good one. Thank you, Danny. We'll definitely look at that further.
Was there a second part to that?
Yeah, he's asking if we're able to enclose or I guess roof the entire 250 seat area, basically the lower bowl.
We actually looked at that, and that didn't necessarily kind of keep with the aesthetic of the entire project. There are areas that are still covered and still open. I mean, this is an outdoor event location, so you are still outdoors. The element that is actually over this piece, it's meant to provide shade. I think if we're worried about inclement weather, the event may be postponed. That would have to be discussed with the programming for the venue.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Great questions. Next question is from Steve Kinsella. He's asking, when entering a fee-based event, where are the control points for those who have bought tickets?
That has been heavy on our mind as well. I mean, this is such a large site. There's no way that you can kind of prevent people from sneaking all the way around the hill, or, you know, I think that for the most part, nobody will really do that. But we would set up a control point at this particular location. So if you were to actually descend down to the amphitheater itself, that would be that ticket collection point. Something could be set up there to be able to do that. It's not meant to be, you know, your high-end rock concert hall. It's meant to be a more family-friendly neighborhood type of event space.
Okay. He's asking if any of the shade structures currently support solar power. I think we answered that. Currently, we're not planning for solar on the roofs and structures, but we'll definitely consider that for the future. His last question is, if I as an actor have an exit from center stage, where do I go to be off stage? Do I have to travel to the edge of the building and around? I see no plaster walls.
We had discussed that there could be a drape that is set up for an upstage, if it's a theatrical performance. The theatrical lighting pipes would be able to hold up an upstage drape. We could also set up and establish wings for something, and even Torum, the front proscenium type of space, if we wanted to do something like that. So the concept is that this is going to be very flexible. If you are actually on stage and need to exit, you could exit stage left, stage right, but then you could travel behind your cyclorama, if you want to call it that upstage curtain, and come off stage.
Thanks, Jordan.
I hope that answers his question.
I think it does. Next question is from DR. He's asking, how will you manage the flow of traffic in and out to reduce impact to the local community? So that's yet to be determined, DR. Like I mentioned, we are going through a CEQA process. We will have a traffic consultant on board that will be helping us through and analyzing the traffic in and out of the this project and the amphitheater, for events and also for regular use as well. So we do have that on our minds as this project moves forward, and we will have a consultant that will help us through to help get there. And sure enough, sometime I think by mid of next year, you'll start to see what we have identified as the best path moving forward for managing traffic in and out of the site.
There currently is on site 2 driveway aprons that are out there currently. And they're actually in the locations you see where the entrances are. So as Bruce had noted, these entrances could be closed off to vehicular traffic when it doesn't want to be used. But it is wide enough for emergency vehicles and 2-way traffic. But you're right, the EIR will determine if an additional street light needs to be placed here or whatever. But we felt like there was sort of an easy way in and easy way out. There's never, at the end of a performance, there's never, there's always a little bit of a jam up wherever you go. But we think with the 2 exits, it should be accommodating.
Thanks, Jordan. Similar question from Karen. She's asking if stoplights will be put along Vineyards Parkway due to the increased traffic. So again, Karen, similarly, like I mentioned, we will be hiring a consultant to help us through that and identifying and mitigating traffic impacts and analyzing and part of that will be a warrant study to determine whether a traffic signal is needed at the project entrances and exits or elsewhere outside of this along Vineyards Parkway. So more to come on that. Question is from Chris. Will alcohol be sold and will there be limits and a cutoff time in order to cut down on DUIs? Bruce, you want to give this one a shot?
Again, it hasn't been determined, but this is one thing I can see is, the art, wine, and jazz kinds of events So it's possible that alcohol could be served here by permit. So that is something that could be done. As far as mitigating issues with DUIs and that type of thing, I think that would leave that up to law enforcement to comment on something like that, but it's something that we will take a close look at and follow very close safety procedures if alcohol is part of any venue.
Thanks, Bruce. Next one's probably for you as well. Leslie Servine is asking, is there a long-term endowment to maintain the amphitheater? What does the operating pro forma look like?
There's not an operating endowment at this point. That will be something that we will continue to look at. The operating pro forma has not yet been determined. We're still working through that process. We do have the market feasibility study that has given us some information to inform us towards what that programming would look like, but we're still working through that.
Okay, next question is from Steve Kinsella. Is there a pit area in front of the stage for an orchestra?
No.
Okay.
This is not meant to be a a road show house with this full fly tower and orchestra pit. I don't think they're really anticipating that type of performance here. So right now there is no orchestra pit out front. Now, if there is a grassy area and a little bit of the concept of that arroyo moving through, could one set up a small orchestra down there in front? That's absolutely possible.
Next question or comment is from Leslie Servine. She's asking, she's stating, we need water stations and toilets open all year, basically year all round to hikers and bikers. As of now, there are no services available in this area. So maybe Jordan, do we have any toilets?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We have, if I go back up to the barn at the upper level, I think if there's no performance down by the amphitheater, those two accessible restrooms for the general public would be completely closed off. That's how I would see that operating. That's not to say that wouldn't happen, but that would be my guess. Upstairs at the barn, though, there is an easy way to open the men's and the women's rooms for bikers and hikers as they move through the area, as well as a watering station that is also located in that location.
Thank you, Jordan. Next question is from DR. Will you compensate or support homeowners to improve sound insulation? Similarly, that will come from the environmental analysis and sound study that our environmental consultant will be performing. So if indeed there are impacts to the nearby residences, we'll definitely have to mitigate accordingly. If that includes insulation and improved sound insulation, we'll have to explore that, but we'll have to defer that to a later point to determine. Thank you, DR. Next question is from Danny. He's saying, enclosing the roofing of the 250 seat area and stage would negate the environmental impact of the theater. I think he might be referring to sound from the theater. Okay. Duly noted. I know, similarly, we will be hiring a consultant to analyze the sound impacts of the project, as well as, Jordan and his team has done design level analysis as far as, trying to direct the theater, not the theater, but the amphitheater in such a way that it minimizes sound impacts to the nearby residents. So definitely on our minds, Danny. Next question is comment is from Cloud Jones. How are the costs of this project distributed over the residents, evenly or all over Brentwood? I'll start by saying the initial cost for the design and construction of this project is all developer funded. Currently, the budget for the project is $8.1 million. Again, that is money that we have in hand, and the city's that the city received from developers. With regards to your question, perhaps it's regarding the project cost for operation and maintenance. Bruce, you want to take that one, that part of it?
Sure. So the operation and maintenance costs would be spread citywide to all residents in Brentwood. And it won't compare to, specific costs towards residents of Trilogy and Vista Dorado. So it'll operate like a community park, and the cost associated, just like other community parks, are spread out throughout all of the residents in Brentwood.
Thank you. Next question is from David Dolter, our planning commissioner. He's stating that you are introducing an intergenerational use into a senior community. Mitigations for sound, lighting, traffic parking, and the location of parking will be critical to obtain final approval. Thank you, David, and we'll definitely have that on our minds moving forward. Let's see. Next question is from Danny. He's saying that he sees no gates in the proposal. I think as Jordan and Bruce talked about, we may integrate gates in the future to close off the site. Again, that will be all looked at in the future, but for now, we're just not showing it in these initial schematic and conceptual drawings, but we'll have that in mind as we move forward. Next question is from Mel Zawalski. Any thoughts about allowing access to the site via Marsh Creek Road rather than through the center of the Trilogy community? That has come up in the past, I think, of people or the request to have vehicular traffic enter from Marsh Creek Road. We have looked at that. There are several other properties that we would have to cross through, such as state parks. And it's just infeasible at this point to consider that, Mel. And it would definitely kill the project in terms of our budget. So what we are looking at is the 2 access points that Jordan previously showed on some of the initial slides. So thank you for that comment, but yeah, currently we are only looking at connections to Vineyards Parkway. Next question is from Martin Baumann. He's asking about gates. As I mentioned earlier, that will be looked at in the future, just not at this time. Next question is from Dave Gilbert. You're building in a 55+ community. Excess noise, traffic, lighting, and security will obviously be a huge impact. Your plans are all about the commercial benefits. DLR and the city of Brentwood have not adequately considered the impacts of security and these impacts. This project should be moved to someplace less intrusive to the community. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dave. Like I mentioned earlier, we will be definitely looking at the environmental impacts and impacts to the community as part of this project over the next year as we go through this supplemental EIR process. But duly noted, we are really concerned as well, and we want to be as conscientious as possible, considering this project is within a 55+ community. Thank you for your comments. Next question is from Mel Zimowski. Are there any time limits regarding how late a show can last into the evening? Example given, show must end by 10 p.m. As Bruce mentioned earlier, programming will be determined at a later point, and we will get into that in due time. We definitely want to, I don't think we would want events to go beyond 10 p.m., but we'll have to figure that out as the programming gets fleshed out in the future.
Yeah, Alan, I'll just say that yes, there will be limits on that. Okay. We'll just determine what that time frame is, but we will set those time frames and stick to a schedule.
Thanks, Bruce. Next question is from Julie Gabout. Would overflow parking go into the college or nearby neighborhoods? I would say no. As we talked about earlier, we believe the 250 spaces that we're currently planning is sufficient for the 750 seat amphitheater. If we were to expand, you know, that is a possibility that we could partner with the college for additional parking, but at least for this initial project that for the project we're considering at the moment, we don't see the need for overflow parking. Next question is from Deborah Papas. It sounds as though this project is a done deal. Has the entire community voted in favor of this venue? If so, when was this vote taken? I'll take a shot at this. Deborah, an amphitheater / winery was originally contemplated at this site with the original Vineyards at Marsh Creek development. It was a part of it. Through some subsequent development agreements with the city, it has transitioned to what it is today, but it was always envisioned and originally entitled through this plan development to have this site be to have the site have an amphitheater. So in a way, this was voted in favor of this type of venue and use back when the original overall subdivision was approved by the city. And that was when, if any votes happened, it was in that time by city council at that time.
Yeah, Alan, I'll just jump in. It's not that there was a vote to, you know, all the residents in Brentwood that they voted for an amphitheater, but this has been given from council direction over the years through the development agreement in 2004, through recent strategic planning with the city council. But as far as this being a done deal, we are going through the design phase and the CEQA analysis. And after those processes are done, this will go back to the city council before they move forward with construction. So the council will have another opportunity to review all of the information, design, program, operations, before they move forward with the construction phase.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Kimberly Christian. I'm looking out my window towards the hills now. It is dark. How will the lighting in the parking lot affect the night sky? Will they be constantly turned on? Jordan, you want to touch on the parking lot lighting?
Well, I think the lighting has to be, you know, it's part of the operations and when the facility is open. If there are no cars there, I'm sure there's going to be the lights could be shut down. The question is, do you still need some low light levels around the site if there are people that are meandering around late at night? So that's something that we're going to have to actually discuss and look at the codes and try to understand that and work with the city about a light level. The key would be not to have light pollution. So that is our goal as well.
Thank you. Next question is from Leslie Servine. If you could elaborate, your question is, what is the season? Not sure what you're alluding to there, but maybe if you could follow up with a clarification, that'd be great. Next question is from Sean Bien. Bruce mentioned that there will be gates for this facility. Where are the gates located in the design?
I think we had discussed early that if there were actually gates, we're talking about vehicular gates, and they would actually occur at the aprons into the site so that nobody can actually drive onto the site. Those are the gates that we're referring to.
Next question's from David Dolter. Have you consulted with the club at Trilogy about competition regarding events such as weddings? Yes, we have, David. Jordan, you want to recap some of that, but basically they have expressed the same concerns as well with regards to competition. Our goal here is not to compete with the club at Trilogy, definitely. And we feel that whatever we ultimately come up with here should be a complement to rather than in competition with the club at Trilogy. So that is surely on our minds. We have had preliminary discussions with the community, as well as the club about this. But we'll continue to have those conversations, and surely looking for that feedback to see how this project can help to complement and not take away any businesses from Club at Trilogy. Next question is from Anurag Bajpai. Have we done experimental verification for sound level, sound decibel levels, or just simulations? Has wind direction been considered in simulations? We should do physical experiments, and I would like to volunteer for those those decibel measurements.
Well, it sounds like we'd love to have you out there. We haven't gone out to the site. We've only been to the site a couple of times because of COVID, obviously, everyone with their masks on. But we've only done this via computer modeling at this time, which is fairly accurate, which we have found for our various all our projects. So that is how we've done the simulations at this time. We have looked at a little bit of the wind and how the natural wind comes through the site, and it did not really affect the design in any significant way.
Thank you. I would just add to that we will have, as part of the CEQA process, we will be hiring a noise consultant, and they will be doing a environmental level analysis to see, to measure the kind of the effects that the project will have, not only from the amphitheater itself, but also from the parking lot, from vehicles driving into and out of the parking lots, and basically an overall environmental view of sound studies. So I'll keep you in mind as we move forward, and I'll let the consultant know that we have a volunteer here to be a part of that study. Thank you, Anurag. Next question is from Shelley Grimm. Is there only one pathway to the amphitheater? If so, it appears that the walkway will be overcrowded at the end of the event.
Well, that's an excellent observation, and there is a potential for that depending on the type of event that occurs. But with the amount of people that are actually here, I can't imagine that it's going to be that large of a hardship as people leave an outdoor amphitheater type of setting at the end of a show. People leave sort of at various stages, and then there are people that always sort of hang out at the end of it. So we can go back and look at increasing the size of those walkways, but that would be a larger impact on the site, as well as more costs that would be associated with that. But it's something we could consider.
Thank you. Next question is from Lori Castro. This facility will impact the entire security and traffic on the 2-lane Vineyard Parkway that runs through the heart of Trilogy at the Vineyards, which is a 55 and over community. How is this good for this community? How can you control the increase of traffic through our community during the events? I'll start with Lori that, as I mentioned earlier, we will be hiring a traffic consultant to do a heavy analysis as to the impacts of increased traffic from the project, and probably any impacts identified will be properly mitigated, whether that's through, we'll have to look at it definitely, and we'll have a consultant on board to do that. I would like to also give an opportunity for Steve Percivan, the city's traffic engineer, to see if he had any additional feedback on this one.
Not necessarily. I mean, we understand the concern of the neighborhood up there. We went through a similar exercise with the community college, and kind of that's why we brought in the specific traffic consultant to look at the very, very specific nature of this, including all of the intersections, the way in, the way out. And we're going to look at bicycles, pedestrians, and everything we can. And then, obviously put forward those answers. So hopefully we answer all of these questions that are coming up, and everybody can live with it. And we don't want to disrupt anybody. We want to try and have everybody live peacefully here. So, but fair and appears that the traffic consultant is going to look into all of that.
Thank you, Steve. Next question is from DR. Will there be marketing and sponsorship, electronic boards, etc.? I'll probably defer to Josh Ewan and Bruce on this one, but beforehand, Jordan, are there any electronic boards on this? I don't think so. Or...
Currently, there are no electronic boards, but there are areas for marketing, if you will, that can be, in that sort of breezeway between where the restrooms are and the access to the box office, that can be sort of downplayed and not change the kind of character that of a lot of, information stapled to a wall. Right? Nobody really wants that.
Okay, thanks. Bruce and Josh, any comments on marketing and sponsorship?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have marketing and sponsorship programs for the programming and operational side. However, I don't necessarily see electronic billboards and that type of thing, where it's going to be something that could be seen outside of the area of the site. So marketing and the program of marketing and sponsorships will be something we will have, but not necessarily electronic billboards that are going to be flashing and be seen by the residents.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Chris, but it might be a repeat question from earlier. Will alcohol be sold, and will there be limits and a cutoff time in order to cut down on DUIs? I believe the answer is generally yes. There will be efforts to make sure there are no to minimize DUIs as a result of the amphitheater project. Next question is from David West. He states he apologizes for coming in late. He's saying, after working in the live event market for 25 years, 750 to 1,000 isn't actually a lot of people. In fact, it severely limits the type of show that will come to a venue. What is the main goal for programming here is, in essence, who would perform here? Also, that turn for your backstage area is a nightmare for trucks loading in. 10 people dressing rooms take children's shows out. I guess that rules out children's shows. The green room is a closet. You know that green rooms are typically a place to be when not on stage. Why would a performer want to hang out in that? Also, how would an orchestra hang out in that? I could go on. So, Jordan, you want to take a shot at some of this as far as maybe the truck loading and the...
Yeah, I'm gonna when it comes to the programming, I'll refer back to Bruce. But in terms of the spaces that we had just discussed, I mean, actually, the programming should be discussed first in a way, because the types of venues that were anticipated about coming here was worked with vendors and live entertainment people in local businesses in the community. And they are not anticipating your large rock show where you have, 3 semi-tractor trailers coming in to drop off a variety of equipment and teams of people to perform. There is space in this is almost meant to be thinking of it like a high-end, almost like educational facility in a lot of ways. I mean, in terms of the back of house. Not very many people can fit in the green room, but a couple can. And if you needed to double as a dressing room or a bridal suite, it could do that. The corridor is lined with a series of lockers that people can actually put their personal belongings in when they do in fact go on stage, or leave their cases in a, let's say it's the storage area of the loading dock for in case an orchestra plays, as would if they had performed in any sort of smaller auditorium type area. We looked at a lot of that stuff very carefully, and based also on budgetary requirements for the project, this is what the project can afford.
Thanks, Jordan. Bruce, you want to touch on kind of the main goal of programming is here?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is this is more of a community-oriented type of amphitheater and programming space. So it's not intended to be a large scale regional draw with 5 to 10,000 people showing up for those kinds of larger events. It's more of an intimate setting for community size, entertainment, theater, movies, that type of thing.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, David, for that question and comment. Next question is from Julie. Is there a way to require online mapping systems to direct people to the venue via Highway 4, the Marsh Creek exit versus Vineyards Parkway? I might have to defer to Steve on this one. Any comments on this?
Oh, I can't get into the online mapping system. I will add that when the study was put together for the community college, they're fairly certain that 75% of those people will come via Highway 4 to Marsh Creek to Vineyards Parkway. One interesting thing that we've noticed, and this is due to the completion of the interchange at Balfour Road, is that the total volume on Vineyards Parkway has actually gone down over the years, and that's because people now don't get stuck at Balfour Road. At the end of the day, in my 28 years of traffic, I've always thought that traffic's a lot like water. It figures out the best way to get in and out. And if having to come up Fairview and dealing with, multiple traffic signals and delays, they just won't do that. They'll ultimately use Highway 4, Marsh Creek to Vineyards Parkway. Granted, those who live in the proximity in Trilogy itself will not, but I would guess that given what they did with the study for this community college, and likewise, this will be addressed in the study that we're having done. They're going to give me a trip distribution, which is going to tell me where they think people will come to and from. Bottom line is Marsh Creek and Highway 4 is the fastest way in and out. So I'm pretty certain that's what the majority of the people are going to use.
Thank you, Steve. Next question is from David West. He's asking if anybody from the city asked Concord what they wish Concord Pavilion was. I know I haven't. Not sure. Bruce, do you want to answer this one?
I know that in the market feasibility analysis that was done, Concord Pavilion was one site that they studied. But again, the Concord Pavilion is a much larger regional type of facility. So this is not anything on that size or scale. This one is even much more, I think, smaller than even like the Wente. It's more of an intimate, more of a community-minded type of programming venue.
Thanks, Bruce. Next question is from Sean. I think he's just clarifying that Jordan answered his question earlier regarding, I think it was a season. Next question is from Julie. What is the proximity of the north entrance to Old Vine Place? Jordan, could you zoom out to that part?
Let me see if I have that on an older map that we looked at that actually. Let me see. Old Vine Place. Maybe is that further up the hill?
It may be. Not sure.
You're seeing the site here. I don't have that here.
Okay. Well,
yes, the intersection with Old Vine Place is the upper entrance to the project.
Oh, got it. Jordan, if you could go to the overall site that shows the project, the roadway connections to Vineyards Parkway.
Okay, hold on. Not to make anybody sick while I pan across.
Mm-hmm. So look at the northern entrance.
Right here?
Mm-hmm. So it's, to answer the question, the entrance is currently right at the intersection of Old Vine Place, I believe. Next question is from Dave Gilbert. Does the city have a plan to mitigate crime, traffic, noise, homelessness that might be associated with this venue? That is always a concern. You know, with regards to traffic and noise, I mentioned we will have a CEQA analysis that will get into heavy detail on that. With regards to crime and homelessness, that will also be considered moving forward. We definitely don't want to make this site inviting for homeless and crime. Not sure what else to add to that, but we will definitely have that in our minds, Dave. Thank you. Steve Kinsella is asking if the community band or chorale wants to use this facility, must they carry their choir risers, music stands, instruments from the parking lot, or is there a backstage access for vehicles for loading and unloading?
Yeah, there's a backstage access for loading and unloading. I mean, it may not currently show it on this, but there's actually a loading dock that would occur here, and we could load inside the building itself to stage it, or it could go straight onto stage. And then we have some light and sound equipment storage also.
Thank you. Next question is from Jackie. In addition to gates for security, will you consider actual security personnel when not in use to ensure that the site won't be used by people not approved by, I assume, the city? That will be looked at. I know we do hire security for other facilities for the city. So I'm sure Bruce will be looking to that as we move forward. Bruce, do you have anything to add on that?
No, we'll evaluate that and see if something like that is necessary.
Thank you. Next question is from Marisol Velez. Thank you for your recognition that this is on Miwok land. It would be great to have a land recognition ceremony before the opening of the event. I'm excited to see this moving forward. I have been waiting for this since I moved to Brentwood in 2005. Thank you. Well, thank you, Marisol, for those comments. And yeah, I appreciate and I recognize your excitement, and we all are. We all are excited to see this project move forward. So thank you for those comments and for the encouragement here.
I like the idea of having some sort of land recognition ceremony. That sounds like a beautiful thing.
It does. Next question is from Trilogy. Will you be adhering to the city's current noise ordinance? Yes, we will. Next question is from Deborah Pappas. In the final feasibility study from August 2019, it states that there are plans for a phase 2. Phase 2 would add up to 4,000 seats to the venue, along with a set building garage and a resident cluster of tiny houses. The estimated cost for this additional phase will be $28 million. How soon after this first phase will the second phase begin? Bruce, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I don't anticipate a second phase that would allow that kind of level of addition to the facility. It's being designed right now for the size and scope of what it is, and the future phase of an event center is a future indoor facility that's more of an arts, cultural type of facility, not expanding onto the size of the amphitheater and allowing for that size of a venue. That's not what is anticipated.
Thanks, Bruce. Next question is from Ella Russell. What happens if the traffic consultant decides this is not a good plan? Well, what do you do then? The traffic consultant will be measuring impacts to traffic operations, levels of service at various areas along Vineyards Parkway. I don't see how they would say this is not a good plan. Basically, through this process, they'll be identifying any impacts and as well as pointing out proper mitigations to address that. So I don't anticipate that that would occur. But thank you for your question. Next question is from Deborah Pappas. And also, where will this new phase be positioned? I think Bruce touched on that earlier about the second phase and its likelihood of not happening. Last question.
Alan, though, I think you can show, or Jordan, you can show where that future event center is. I did mention that as being a future phase event center, and those buildings are placed onto the plan there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next question, or last question we currently have on the Q&A is from Julie. She's just mentioning with regards to the connection, the northern connection, she's stating that it's going to be a real problem for the Old Vine neighborhood. So like I said, we will definitely analyze that. Julie, we'll have that looked at in depth. We definitely don't want to cause any problems for the community. But thank you for that. And you'll see how we proceed once the consultants perform their work, and we'll present that accordingly to the public. With that, kind of want to transition over to giving opportunities for folks to raise their hands so that they could be heard for questions. So if you could, using the Zoom feature for raise hand, please indicate to us that you wish an opportunity to speak. We are approaching the 8 o'clock hour, but we're here to continue this as long as needed. So please, I'll defer to Elaine. So if you could please identify attendees and help us through this. Thank you.
Sure, Alan, good evening. The first person I see that has their hand raised is Trilogy. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. So whenever you're ready. You have been unmuted. Hello? They did ask a question on the Q&A, so I'm not sure if they're still on.
I think you may have muted him. Try to unmute Trilogy one more time.
Okay, let me ask him. I'd ask them to unmute and no response. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next person, and if that hand continues to be up, I will call Trilogy again. Okay, see L. Russell. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute L. Russell. Go ahead whenever you're ready. So they've asked a question also in Q&A.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. L. Russell here. I asked a question earlier about what would happen if the traffic engineers decided that the plan wasn't good and was told that it would be. I live at Vista Dorado. So I am concerned about the traffic on Vintage Parkway, especially in light of the new college and the area that we're talking about being a new venue. So when I asked the question about traffic, I was kind of told that, it wouldn't be a problem, but what if it is?
Thank you. And Steve Kurzban, you want to take a shot at this one?
Well, I think the other way to look at it is we're not really asking the traffic consultant their opinion on whether it works or not. What they're going to do is they're going to take measurements of existing traffic. They're going to add in this traffic, and they're going to paint us a picture of what the future will look like, hopefully on an hour-by-hour basis, with this traffic added into what you currently have out there. If there's any place in the system that it fails, would be more of a CEQA issue where, as an example, we come up with a situation that is deemed to be, there's no mitigation for it. I don't offhand know what that is, but that's the process where if there's a failure point that is related to traffic, it will come out in CEQA, not so much because the consultant says he doesn't think it's going to work, because the consultant says, here is the result of your project. And then it kind of gets answered from there. So he's going to do the best, or they're going to do the best they can to paint us a picture of what this looks like when it's up and running.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Can I also ask, I've heard the term CEQA as just a regular resident here at Vista Dorado. I'm not really sure what that means. Could you explain that to me?
Sure. It stands for California Environmental Quality Act. It's basically something that we have to go through. We don't have a planner currently on, but basically whenever there's a new project that's being proposed, we have to go through in California a CEQA process to identify environmental impacts that the project would have on its surroundings. So that's what it stands for. But basically it leads us into this process of going through an environmental study of the project, where again, we will be looking at things like traffic, noise, biological resources impacts, let's see, greenhouse gases, not only from the construction of the project, but from the resulting traffic, looking at lighting, possible lighting effects to the environment. So there's a number of things that we'll be looking at through that process, and that's what CEQA captures. And it's something that, again, whenever there's a new project that's being proposed, it's looked at through those guidelines.
Thank you, Alan, for your explanation. I appreciate it.
No, great question.
Thank you, L. Russell. Okay, the next hand I see is Umberto Marconi. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. A little bit more of a softball question and comment. I live in Trilogy. I'm excited about this. I think it's a great program. I'm looking forward to it a lot. My question would be, does anybody have an idea, a general idea of the timeline here, how things are going to go forward and when the ground might be broken? Thank you.
Yes, I'll take that. Thank you, Umberto. I'm glad you're excited about the project as we are. Let's see, because we're going to go through this environmental study process, it added considerable time to this project. Initially, we were planning to go to construction during the summer of next year, but as a result of, we're doing the additional analysis that we need to, now that we're at we've nailed down the programming for the project, we're ready to move forward with the CEQA process and environmental analysis. So to answer your question, we're hoping to start construction in the summer of 2022, summer/fall of 2022. And it's already next year. Oh my gosh, I forgot we were in 2021. 2023, sorry, excuse me. So it's construction beginning in the summer/fall of 2023, with the facility hopefully opening in the following year in 2024, summer/fall. So that's our current timeline, Umberto. Bit of waiting, a bit more of a wait for you, unfortunately.
Currently, I do not see any hands raised.
All right, with that, we just hit the 8 o'clock hour, but I just want to give anybody else still in the workshop, if you guys had it. Oh, looks like we have a new raise hand.
Sorry, yeah, I saw a new hand, sorry about that. I have a Jackie that just raised her hand, so let me go ahead and unmute Jackie. Okay, Jackie, whenever you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm a resident here in Vista Dorado, and you know, watching the entire presentation tonight, I do think that these plans look great. It looks like this is going to be something very fun. But a lot of the questions around, I think, the resident concerns, and I understand why we're, you know, kind of deferred to such as things as like, well, how are we going to prevent homelessness? Are these going to be gated at night so that people can't loiter around at night? Other questions such as, you know, I think there's a lot of concern around this massive phase 2 potential. And so my overarching question here is there a timeline? Is there a plan for this committee to come back and give the community some assurances and some solid answers on these items? Because I think people love the idea of what they're seeing here, but have some real concerns that they want some assurances on so they can just put themselves at ease.
Thanks, Jackie. Let's see. So currently, yeah, we're working on this first phase of the project. It's really just what's been presented so far, with the amphitheater being the focal point. With regards to a future phase 2, we just currently don't have funding identified for it. As far as timelines go, I can't give you.
Sorry, maybe I should clarify. I wasn't looking for timelines for when phase 2 would happen. I think from what I heard on this call, I think a lot of people are praying to God that phase 2 would never happen and that other things would take place that would make them feel much more comfortable about this. But those questions were all kind of deferred. Is there a timeline for this committee to come back and say, hey, the plan is this, the plan for that is this, and the plan for that is this?
I want to see if
Jackie, yeah, great questions. We're going through the design phase right now, and these questions will be answered. Some of them will be through the impacts, will be further studied through the CEQA process for the impacts, and the operational part of the program. You know, we'll be working forward to, and these questions will come forward before the council makes any decisions on the process. So by the time CEQA is done and this goes back to the council for the green light to move forward, we will have more of those questions and details answered.
And you're planning another forum to come back and kind of inform the community about that stuff, so we can choose if there's something that we want to push back on or something that you've given us assurances on. Yes,
and this is workshop number 1. I think there's another workshop that we planned before, as this design gets worked out and finalized. There will be another workshop, I believe, coming up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I do see another hand up. It's from Julie. I'll go ahead and unmute you, Julie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I agree with the previous caller that I hope and pray that phase 2 never happens. Overall, I think that the amphitheater, as laudable as it might be as a city asset, I don't really think it's compatible with a senior living community. We're already going to be impacted significantly when the LMC really becomes active. And then this on top of it is going to be even more so. I think Highway 4 to Marsh Creek is going to be impacted. Certainly Vineyards Parkway at Old Vine, which is my own neighborhood, is going to be impacted. So I'm not looking forward to that at all, even for a nice asset like that. So I'm really hoping, I can see, I work for county government and I see how this process works all the time. And I could see that this is pretty much a done deal. It's just a matter of what are the impacts and how can you mitigate them. So I'm really hoping to hear that the city is prepared in exchange for, the good faith support of this community to take seriously what the potential impacts are and to offer some real mitigation for those impacts, both traffic, community security because of crimes of opportunity that are going to come about with all these people that don't live in this area coming into this area. So I hope that the city is going to take that seriously.
Thank you, Julie. I do not see a hand raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Julie, for those comments. With that, any last minute, anyone else want to raise their hands for any last comments before we close the session? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you again. Just wanted to reiterate that this workshop has been recorded and will be made available on the city's website for future viewing. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I appreciate everyone's feedback. Everything's been taken in. We won't forget you. And we look forward to reaching out to you again with a future workshop to talk through a little bit more. Like I said, we're excited for this. Everyone's been working hard from the city side and on our architect side with DLR Group and Dusty and Gates. So again, I'll wish you guys a good night and thank you again for attending. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.